So today we're gonna be touching on New York sundown towns, right? So from a high level, there's different structures of how the sundown town model has been implemented. It's totally different on the West Coast from how it's been implemented in the heartland of America, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, all that shit, to how it was implemented in the Midwest versus up north. You get what I'm saying? There's different models, right? So for New York State, the racial exclusion architecture is layered, sophisticated, and frequently misread as progressive because of the state's liberal political reputation. The dominant enforcement style in New York is institutional rather than vigilante. So I ain't gonna get too deep into the all of that. We're gonna just jump right on into it. So there has been phases of Klan activity. So we're just gonna kind of hit through those real quick. Phase one, which was the 1920s, the second Ku Klux Klan built an unprecedented organizational infrastructure across Long Island and upstate New York. Some local historians estimate that in the mid 20s, over 20,000 Long Island residents were Klan members, including Freeport Chief of Police and three Suffolk County Republican Party chairmen. So, yeah, this wasn't no fringe activity. This was mainstream behavior of whites in Long Island at that time. Jump into phase two from 1947 to 1968, now entering into, the civil rights era from end of World War II to there. It said that suburban development became the primary mechanism for racial exclusion. Levittown, following Levittown's model of mass produced homes, FHA backing, and racially restrictive covenants, this became the nationwide template. And then even before the first houses were sold in Levittown, sales agents were aware that no applications from non-white families, including black, Asian, and Jewish ones, would be accepted. And the developer exclusion was backed by federal policy. The FHA only insured mortgages in racially homogeneous developments, basically all white communities. Phase three from 1968 to the present, after the Fair Housing Act outlawed explicit exclusion, New York municipalities shifted to exclusionary zoning, school district fragmentation, and other, sophisticated methods. All right, so yeah, we're just gonna go on ahead and jump right on into the first one. Massapequa, a tier two sundown town. So located in the southern Nassau County, pretty much damn near the border of Nassau and Suffolk County, Massapequa developed primarily in the 1950s, 60s during the mass suburban build out of Long Island. The broader Nassau County region was saturated with KKK activity in the 1920s with claverns. If you don't know what a clavern is basically kind of like a lodge or whatever you want to call it, and witchcraft, a coven, whatever the fuck it's a group, a gathering, you know what I'm saying? A unit, a local headquarters type situation. So they were heavily documented in Massapequa. Massapequa's demographics are approximately 94%. They 94% as of the recent census data. So there's really not no real black presence there. That's what I'm getting at. Nassau County was broadly identified as having multiple claverns in the 20s, but I ain't gonna touch on the other towns that they mentioned there because those towns will be mentioned further down. Mechanisms of control with housing barriers and developer era restrictive covenants. No blacks allowed or no coloreds allowed. However you want to flip it. Tomato, tomato. School district fragmentation, reputational deterrence, policing patterns, all of those things are going to be for most of these that we cover. So due to all of that factored in with the KKK infrastructure, this is classified as a tier 2 functional sundown town. Baldwin, Long Island, that's where all the little honeys was at. At least, from the 90s, we would slide over there. So Baldwin is classified as a tier 3 sundown town. So it's one of the few South Shore communities to have a meaningful black population, but that's primarily in North Baldwin, which was developed as a distinctive enclave. This spatial segregation within the larger Baldwin was evidence of exclusionary geography. The main residential areas were built with the same restrictive covenant culture as the surrounding towns, and black residents were confined to a specific subzone of the greater Baldwin. Today, Baldwin is more racially mixed than most neighboring communities, but that integration is still spatially segregated within the larger Baldwin. School performance disparities between North Baldwin schools and those serving wider census tracts reflect the unresolved infrastructure of past exclusion. And then the mechanism of control here, specifically for Baldwin, spatial containment. This goes back to I lived here my whole life. This isn't a sundown town. They contained you niggas to one part of the town that's still a sundown town. All right, we're going to move along. Bronxville, one of the most thoroughly documented exclusionary communities in New York State and the broader Northeast. The village operated as an explicitly racially and religiously restrictive enclave for most of the 20th century. No black residents were permitted, and Jewish residents were also excluded by restrictive covenants enforced by the Bronxville Property Owners Association. Bronxville remains approximately 95% white today, despite Westchester County location in a diverse metro area. The village's demographic composition has changed minimally since the civil rights era. Its median home values consistently rank among the highest in New York State, and single family zoning prevents any affordable housing development. All right, so you get it. You get it. Medium home prices exceed 2 million. So there's price barriers. Besides that, restrictive covenants, single family zoning, and the reputational exclusion. They got all of the slick trickery to keep your ass out. It's a sundown town. Bell Terry. I know I'm probably butchering that, but shit. It's been forever since I've been in New York. I probably even never even heard of this motherfucker when I lived in New York. Bell Terry or Bell Terre, incorporated village in Suffolk County on the North Shore of Long Island. Approximately 800 residents and is notably in sundown town research specifically because it was the site of a landmark Supreme Court case, Village of Bel Terre versus Boras, 1974. in which the village defended ordinances restricting residents to single family households defined by blood or legal relationship. So while the case involved a student slash household composition rather than race, the legal architecture it validated severely restrictive occupancy rules in an incorporated village is precisely the framework by which sundown town suburbs maintain control. So to this day, it's overwhelmingly white. No affordable housing exists. No rental stock exists. The village residential definition itself structurally excludes any but established affluent nuclear families. Mechanisms of control, you already know, zoning, land, the all of the same shit plus extras, you know what I'm saying? Incorporation used as basically another exclusion mechanism. This is definitely a tier one sundown town. Levittown. Levittown is arguably the most important sundown suburb in American history, not merely a New York case, but the national template for post World War II racial exclusion in suburbia. The buying agreement signed by all those who purchased homes in Levittown, they basically stated that the property could not be used or rented by any individuals other than those of the Caucasian race. It gets no, it doesn't get more crystal clear than that. So we're gonna move on. On the night of October 12th, 1923, the Klan put on a pyrotechnic spectacular, burning crosses in a dozen villages across Long Island, including what would become Levittown. The cultural infrastructure of racial exclusion was already in place before the first house was even built in Levittown. Racially restrictive housing covenants. You know what I mean? That's another one. FHA mortgage insurance conditioned on racial homogeneity. Developer enforcement of exclusion even after legal covenants were struck down. Eviction of black tenants and white families who associated with black families. That shit is crazy right there. Well, you cool with some niggas? You gotta get the fuck out of here. So anyway, reputation, yeah, it is what it is. Levittown, the first suburb or the first subdivision in American history built, and this was replicated nationwide, of course. Tier one Sundown Town, the most documented, yada yada, blah blah blah. Next up, Yonkers. Yonkers has one of the most extensively litigated housing segregation histories in the Northeast. In United States versus Yonkers Board of Education, 1985, federal courts found that the city had deliberately concentrated public housing in southwest Yonkers to maintain racial segregation in schools and neighborhoods, a deliberate two-decade policy of spatial containment. So once again, you're gonna have me say it throughout the whole joint. A sundown town can have black people living there. You might think of the movie type shit or what you heard, no niggas allowed. That's more blatant, you know. In the South, it might got been more blatant like that, but it was also like that up north. But you had sundown towns where black people lived there, you know what I'm saying? But they were restricted on where they could live in the town. Most likely, you had to live on the edge of town, over there. You know what I mean? We over here in the beautiful part, and nigga, you over by the train tracks, by the fucking town line, nigga. So that's what that was. You know, today Yonkers is a majority minority today, but the legacy of deliberate segregation is visible in neighborhood by neighborhood racial geography. The southwest section remains predominantly black and Latino, while the northeast Yonkers remains predominantly white and affluent. And so, yeah, that's a tier two sundown town, whether you realize it or not. Garden City, all my Nassau County niggas. Garden City is one of the most thoroughly documented cases of institutional racial exclusion in New York. This was founded as a planned private community in the 19th century. It maintained exclusionary residential character well into the 21st century through active legal mechanisms. Paul W.F. Linder, a real estate developer from Malvern, who was the president of the Homeland Corporation, was also the great titan of the New York State Klan. And because of his role in the development of Malvern, a street and elementary school were named after him. So yes, the people who I went to school with, yeah, I went to Linda Place. Yeah, you went to the Klan school. And down the line, I think they finally shed light on it. And after some legal mumbo jumbo, I think they attempted to rename it. And then I think that's when they changed to Downing instead of Linda Place or something like that. All right, anyway, the developer Klan connection characterizes the wider Nassau County development landscape in which Garden City sat. You have the head of the Klan that is a major figure in real estate and a major figure in the Klan. This shit is integrated, intertwined, you know what I mean? Systemic racism at all these different levels. Garden City, and as of today, even from what they're saying, is 95% white. No meaningful black um, population, no meaningful affordable housing exists. The school district is one of the most resource rich and racially homogeneous on Long Island. Mechanisms of control for this: intentional exclusionary zoning, which is federally adjudicated, economic barriers, reputation, school district, historical burnt crosses. It's a sundown town, a tier one. Floral Park, next up on the list. This is a tier two sundown town. So, historical context: this was incorporated on the Nassau Queens border, located in the heart of a post World War II suburban build out zone with a Covenant era residential stock. The New York Klanswomen in March of 1929 lists multiple Long Island communities that organized Klan rallies. Floral Park sits within the Nassau County zone of documented Klan activity. Same mechanisms of control here. Pretty much, it is what it is. Moving on to the next one on the list. Yaffank. Yaffank, a hamlet in the town of Brookhaven, Suffolk County. This has one of the most documented and specific sundown town histories in the Northeast. Camp Siegfried, operated by the German American Bund, or Bund, which is the American Nazi organization, was located in Yaffank and operated through the 1930s. Yaffank also had direct documented KKK activity. The hamlet's local culture of racial exclusion was sufficiently documented that the Levittown EDU Sundown Town database lists it as a confirmed sundown community. Yafank is still to this day overwhelmingly white, still associated with the legacy of Camp Siegfried. The Suffolk County Police headquarters is located in Yafank, adding an ironic dimension to its role in policing patterns towards communities of color. So this joint right here got multiple mechanisms of control. You got legacy of violence, former Nazi camp, KKK organizational presence, reputational deterrence, policing patterns, and it's the headquarters of the Suffolk County Police. Housing barriers, you know what I mean? It's too much. Tier one. And then there's a couple of tier two sundown towns that are listed. Smithtown, on the North Shore of Suffolk County, which was developed as a affluent white suburb post World War II. Suffolk County's KKK infrastructure is well documented. James Zegel, the U.S. Treasury agent in charge of Bay Shore's Prohibition Enforcement Office, headed the Klan's Islip Clavern and held the title of Grand Exalted Cyclops. As of today, it's still approximately 90% white. Smithtown School District is among the least racially diverse in Suffolk County. And of course, historically, they've had KKK activity, the normal mechanisms of control. You have KKK organizational inheritance, housing barriers, school district identity, economic exclusion, reputation. Check, check, check. Tier two. Next, you got Seaford, which is in Nassau County. Same deal, same setup as Levittown, approximately 95% white. And the reason it was able to maintain this is due to developer era restrictive covenants, housing barriers, FHA financing exclusion legacy. Moving on. Sayville in the town of Islip, Suffolk County, a tier 2 sundown town. I grew up here my whole life. You didn't know that you lived in a sundown town. Sayville appears directly in the cross burning records. Crosses were burned through the year in more than a score of villages, including Sayville. KKK activity. The Islip Clavern was, James Zegel. He was over the Klan in Sayville as well as the other town I just mentioned. So the methods of control were, of course, violence via cross burnings, KKK presence, housing barriers, etc., etc. All right, so now we're gonna keep this thing moving. Oceanside, Nassau County, following the Levittown blueprint, past KKK activity. To this day, approximately 85 to 90% white. Mechanisms of control, developer error, exclusion inheritance, housing barriers, the same story. New York was just suave and slick in how they did their sundown town bullshit. A tier two sundown town. Now we're gonna hit you with something that's kind of like the opposite of a sundown town. North Amityville. This is a tier four on the ranking of full-fledged sundown town to some shit that's just basic segregation. The historical context here is that North Amityville is of note because on Long Island it was a predominantly black community. It was developed as a Negro removal destination. When black families were pushed out of other areas of Long Island, they were sent to North Amityville. So while it's not technically a sundown town, it was a place surrounded by sundown towns where they can offload any blacks that was even trying to come over there. No, you can't fuck with over here, but you can take your ass over there. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was. Okay, we're gonna move on. Like New York got more shit than Arkansas, nigga. I thought Texas and California had this shit. In Georgia, nah. New York is looking like a low key sundown town heavyweight in this bitch. Copeg. I lived on the border of Amityville and Copeg, right over there on Overland Avenue. You know what I'm saying? Copeg is also another situation where it says it's more racially diverse than most areas, but it still was functioning as a sundown town. So in modern times, it's 60% Hispanic, 20% white, and 12% black. But it's still the product of those exclusionary practices over long periods of time. And it finally just got right, maybe, in the last couple of decades. Moving on, moving on. There's hella motherfucking shit here. Roosevelt. Roosevelt is another one just like Amityville. So Roosevelt was another black community, and pretty much for the surrounding all white sundown town areas, potential black home buyers were told you can't stay here, nigga, but you can go over there. Roosevelt. Roosevelt existence as a black community is itself evidence of the surrounding sundown towns. It is a place where black Long Islanders could live when they were excluded from Garden City, Massapequa, and Levittown. It's ranked as a tier 4, so it's not a sundown community, but a contained black enclave produced by surrounding sundown towns. Next up, Scarsdale. Scarsdale is a tier 1 sundown town situation, one of the most prestigious suburbs in Westchester County and one of the most documented exclusionary communities in the Northeast. Scarsdale maintained explicitly racially and religious restrictive covenants well into the civil rights era. The Scarsdale Inquirer, which is the local newspaper, documented community resistance to integration throughout the 50s and 60s. Jewish families were excluded from portions of Scarsdale through restrictive deed covenants as late as the 40s and 50s. In modern times, Scarsdale is still 85% white, with the non white population concentrated primarily in the Edgewood section. The Scarsdale Schools District has amongst the highest per pupil expenditures in the state. So it sounds like they get the best of the best of everything. You know what I mean? Equipment, books, probably sports shit out off the chain, everything. So this is definitely a tier 1. We're gonna keep this shit moving. Seacliff, a village in Nassau County's North Shore, part of the Gold Coast development pattern with restrictive residential character, approximately 93% white. You know what I mean? This is a tier 2. The justification, it was part of the Gold Coast Incorporated Village exclusion pattern. Next up, Tuxedo Park. Tuxedo Park in Orange County is one of the oldest and most explicitly designed exclusionary gated communities in the United States. This shit was founded in 1886 by tobacco heir Pierre Lorillard IV, and as a private enclave for the Gilded Age elite. Tuxedo Park is a walled, gated community with a private security force, control entry, and a HOA. This uh, town has maintained exclusive control over residency throughout its entire history. The community was designed to be inaccessible to the general public and has maintained near total whiteness through its 140-year history. So, of course, the mechanisms of control for this: physical gates, literal walls, literal private security force, home HOA, economic exclusion, etc., etc. You're not getting in, nigga. That's the message. Tier 2, the next joint, Valley Stream. Tier 2, Sundown Town. Now, once again, before y'all come swarming in the comments and all that shit may not be now, hopefully, but for the majority of this motherfucker's existence, it was a sundown town. But let's get into it. A village in Nassau County. It was named directly in the KKK cross burning records. Valley Stream today is actually more racially diverse than it was. The village is approximately 50% white, 20% black, 20% Hispanic, with significant demographic shift since the 1990s. So going back then, it was more white than it is now. Mechanisms of control: historical KKK infrastructure. Demographic shift indicates that the exclusionary mechanisms eventually broke down as, you know, that area became more accessible to Queens adjacent populations. But either way, there you have it. All right, Syosset, the next joint on the list. My mom had a situation in Syosset going to see a white coworker one time. She went out there, kicked it with her homegirl. On the way back, getting ready to leave town, stopped at the gas station. They was like, "No, nigga, do not fucking you can't use the pumps. The pumps don't work." Coming up with all type of bullshit. My mom need gas to get the fuck up out of there so she can get back to Lakeview. And the owner of the fucking gas station, this angry, racist white dude, wilding, his daughter, who was close in age to my mom, came out and was like, "You can use the fucking pump." You know what I'm saying? She helped my mom fill up, and then my mom got the fuck up out of there. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, this is a hamlet in Nassau County on the North Shore, part of the whole Levittown cookie cutter template. So as of modern times, it's approximately 75% white with a significant Asian population. I believe they make up about 18%. The presence of a large Asian population still doesn't negate the fact of a sundown town pattern for black residents. Because what have we all been told historically? Asians are the model minority. So they already have a proximity to whiteness. So as these decades rolled along of just straight banning all non-whites, you get what I'm saying? Motherfuckers were slowly allowed to trickle in here and there, which is why they have an 18% Asian population. But anyway, like all of the other joints on this list, the mechanisms of control, housing barriers, school district identity, economic exclusion, tier 2 sundown town. Of course, the most infamous one from back in the day, at least when I was growing up, Howard Beach. Howard Beach in Queens. This became nationally known for the 1986 racially motivated attack. A group of white teenagers, they attacked three black men. who had car trouble in that neighborhood. And during the attack and chase that later, happened afterwards, one of the guys who fled hopped onto the highway and was struck and killed by a car. So that's what put Howard Beach on the map. And in modern times, apparently Howard Beach remains approximately 85% white. The neighborhood has maintained its reputation as hostile to black visitors and residents since the 1986 incident, which functions as a powerful deterrent. See, word of mouth and reputation is how most of these sundown towns operate. North, south, east, west coast, northwest, Oregon, goddamn Louisiana. It ain't gotta be Klan and the little country music. I mean the movie shit where the sheriff pull up on you and shit. What's going on, boy? What you doing? Nah, it ain't always like that. It's levels to this shit. All right, another shady Queens type situation we got here is Breezy Point. I've fucking never heard of Breezy Point in my life, even though I may have passed through that motherfucker. Because I want to say back in the day, if you caught the bus from, was it Long Beach? Long Beach, that shit would take you through Far Rockaway into Sheepshead Bay, somewhere in there, whatever. If I remember that shit correct, Breezy Point, I believe, is the joint that you would pass through. But either way, it says that Breezy Point is a private cooperative community at the tip of the Rockaway Peninsula in Queens. So this unique case, it's a cooperative with approximately 4,400 homes that controls its own membership process and has maintained a near 100% white demographic throughout its history. And then they goddamn double and triple down this community to this day is still 98 to 99% white, one of the whitest significant size communities in New York City. And most of those families are composed of NYPD and firefighter families. You know what I'm saying? So you see how all that shit is coming together, covering this shit. We talking about racist real estate people, racist sundown towns composed of mostly racist NYPD police, firefighters, not to take away from what they do of saving some lives, but taking black lives every fucking now and then. It is what it is. This is where they at. Of course, the mechanisms of control, private cooperative membership, they get to decide who come in. Besides that, you got, of course, the heavy NYPD presence. No nigga in their right mind trying to slide over there and live over there and got to deal with that bullshit every day. Is your neighbors the same niggas harassing niggas on the fuck out of here? So there's multiple mechanisms of keeping niggas out. This is definitely a tier one fucking sundown town. All right. So boom. Now we're covering five towns area. Five towns ties into a personal situation that I had experienced, and some of my people on Facebook that I went to high school with, they know because we was out there to see one of our white homeboys or whatever. He actually came out to Lakeview, scooped us. We slid out there, had a good time. Got a little rowdy, whatever, whatever. Next thing you know, police pull up. From what I remember correctly, they touched up the white boy a little bit, seasoned his ribs, and then took his car keys, threw them shits into the woods somewhere because it was nighttime when we was out there. Told him do not bring no more niggas out here. And then on top of that, them motherfuckers drove at 1 mile per hour, nigga, and had us march towards the town exit. Now, Five Towns clearly is composed of several little joints. I don't remember crystal clear which one that we were in. It might have been Cedarhurst or it could have been Lawrence, but it was one of the motherfuckers. So, for the historical context, the five towns is composed of Lawrence, Cedarhurst, Hewlett, Woodmere, and Inwood. And it's crazy because I believe my mom might have been born in Inwood at a hospital. But anyway, this was a group of communities on the South Shore, Nassau County, that developed as explicit Jewish white communities after they were excluded from other Anglo-Saxon communities. You know what I mean? So like, there's levels to this shit. You know what I mean? When people talk about, we in a post-racial society, man, fuck out of here, nigga. All that shit is generational, built into this whole thing we know as America. The Anglo-Saxons said nobody can come into our shit. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. As you see here, documented by five towns. The Jewish community that were excluded from the Anglo-Saxon community built their own community, and then they in turn would practice what was done to them by saying fuck you, fuck you, fuck you can't come in. So basically, in a nutshell, they did the same thing. And of course, Five Towns maintains a near zero black residential presence despite having a substantial South Asian population in Inwood, and then a Latino shit going on over there too. So Lawrence School District has a notable demographic divide between the wealthier, predominantly white Jewish sections in the Inwood Far Rockaway area. So how they kept this shit mostly like it is, the same playbook. Housing price barriers, school district identity, community social network, and reputational signals. We're not saying you can't stay here, but you really don't want to stay here. Kind of pretty much sums up the little. Oh, we got bonus. We got some bonus ones for you. So for my fellow Lakeview heads that grew up and went to Malvern, we circling back in case you are coming into the live late. Malvern, tier one in the past, because I heard it's black as hell now. You know what I mean? That's what my barber tell me. It's black as hell now. But historically, for the majority of its time, this was a tier one sundown town. Paul W.F. Linder, a real estate developer from Malvern, who was the president of the Homeland Corporation, who was also the great titan of the New York State Ku Klux Klan, lived here. And because of his role in the development of Malvern, a street and an elementary school was named after him. So some of y'all that's older might still know it as Linda Place Elementary, and then some of y'all might know it as, I believe, Downing Elementary. But either way, there you have it. Freeport. There's not too much info on the current situation in Freeport, but historically, Freeport was a sundown town. Documented 1924, 6,000 Klansmen marched through the town and the village police chief led the procession. Same thing with Babylon out in Suffolk County. Tier 2, Mineola in Nassau County. Same thing. Niggas had a fair called Clorero that was held in Mineola. You know what I mean? These cats was wilding. We already touched on Wantor, Hempstead. Despite it, at least when I lived there and grew up, in Lakeview, it was pretty much black from what I remember. But Apparently, in the past, it was a Klan hub in its past. Riverhead out in Suffolk County, a tier two sundown town. And it happens to be the county seat of Suffolk County. Coincidence? Huntington, tier two sundown town. West Babylon and Shirley, tier two sundown towns. It says recently KKK recruitment flyers turned up in West Babylon and Shirley, according to ABC 7 New York. That was back in 2014. And then the same shit happened into Rockville Center. So everybody in motherfucking Lakeview, you know, shit. Rockville Center's our next door neighbor. Tier 2 sundown town. And then it also goes further to say Rockville Center is one of Nassau County's most affluent and whitest incorporated villages. There it is. So you can be black and live in a sundown town, even though you may not know it's a sundown town because we have a very limited definition of what a sundown town is. And for y'all who are watching and checking this shit out and enjoying what I'm dropping, hit my channel. I got shit on many variety of topics. But my sundown town playlist, we already done touched on Georgia, Texas, California. The last one, Arkansas. Arkansas had a wild shit going on. Besides their standard sundown towns, their shit was totally different than the New York format. They were more, you know, get up out of here before we kill all of y'all niggas. Like they were more of the shit that you might have in your mind as an image of a sundown town. But then they even had reverses of that shit where niggas was held low key in slavery, like well after slavery ended, and it was still a sundown town. Like the whites controlled and ran shit, and they had niggas captive, dead ass. But check the video over there too, and you will see what the fuck I'm talking about. So there was different whole entire models being run in the different regions, depending on what the region was, is how they implemented these sundown town policies and shit. And for those that's also checking in and enjoying the content here, check Rena Freeze. Check out her YouTube channel. She goes in depth into these sundown town videos on a whole other level. You know what I'm saying? So definitely show her some love and check out her content. But in a nutshell, New York built one of the most elaborate racial control architectures in American history and then built an identity around the opposite, being the opposite of the South. We're the liberal hub. We're the liberal fucking, safe haven. We love niggas while still low key practicing white supremacy and systemic racism against niggas. You know what I'm saying? So, then another little tidbit, the Garden State Parkway and the LIE didn't just connect different towns, they drew racial borders between the white area and the black area. So when you're looking at these maps, they are not just county maps, these are racial maps. And with that said, I appreciate y'all checking in, and I will holler at y'all on the next one.